What's up, amigos? Commander Jaime here. Today we're gonna go over a 7 Seas deck profile that was actually presented by G Station a couple days ago. I wanted to highlight this deck profile because it's a little bit different from the starting template that I showed the other day with this CFE Plus program. Thanks again to Makina Blau. So let's start diving into it. Let me click it over here. Here we go. So, for those who don't know, this is the 7 Seas, and each 7 Seas unit actually has the on-hit effect, get a treasure marker. What's different from the starting template is a variety of things. The main topic is the amount of draw triggers. So you're probably looking at this and you're saying, wow, that's a lot of draw triggers. We're talking about 10 draws with 2 crits, 4 heals. And you see the 2-2 ratio split between the draw PG over here, and then of course the crit sentinel rampage as well. And so I'll talk about a little bit why this is very important and it actually helps out the deck as a whole, and also how to mitigate with the amount of draw that sometimes you have that questions like you have a lot of draw triggers, but it sucks when you hard draw them by drawing cards, or even like just generate an advantage at that point where you're drawing extra cards and you're just getting 5k shields. So I'll talk about a little bit about that. So let's start diving into that part. So with the draw triggers, there's 2 things that honestly help the deck. So one of the things that I mentioned in my prior video with the starting template is that you don't want to put the crits on a certain attack because it gives the opponent a second chance to get a damage check trigger at that point. So what happens is that with that, it makes it hard to hit, and at that point it makes it even hard for you to get a treasure marker if you're still getting your third count, your 4th count, 5th count, to all the way to 6th count, which ultimately that you want for Night Mist to be able to actually do the restand, having those absurd number of attacks, especially with our slash A being our beater at that point. So it really helps being that one attack is going to get you 1 treasure marker, and it should at worst give the opponent 1 trigger and you're at their damage tag at that point. I hope that makes sense. And so the other thing that the deck struggled is that honestly it didn't really generate hand advantage as much easier compared to like Night Rose and other decks in the format. In honestly, cards like Night Spinal and Columbar are very good, but they only +1 onto the field. There's no Counterblast to draw 1 card kind of thing. Whereas in Night Rose, for example, we had Ghost Ship, we have Ripple Banshee, and we can actually use those cards multiple times in one turn. So you're drawing 3 to 4, 5, 6 cards, including your drive checks and all that kind of stuff, and really just taking advantage of drawing new cards. This doesn't really have that, as you can see. A lot of the 7 Seas units just have the ability to get it on board to do your multi-attack strategy. And so what helps is the draw triggers that give you that, during your drive track, you can get an extra card that you may play with. And honestly, it just helps with just having that hand advantage, because a lot of decks have a lot of pressure and you want to make sure you have enough cards to actually guard with at that point so you can survive. So a big thing to really think about is the Rampage State crit as well. And it's like, I get there's a lot of draw triggers, and again, they're 5k shields. How do I fix the quality of my hand? And honestly, that's where Greed Shake comes into play, where you can discard a card, mill 2, grab anything from the drop zone. You can start discarding your draw triggers to grab Rampage State, for example, or any other combo pieces that you may need, whether it be a Columbar to go off, or Night Spinal, or even a Night Run over here, for example. And at the same time, you just have access to actually improving the quality of your hand to actually live at that point. What's really also something that once you start playing against certain matches, you would think Protect 2 would be the correct marker to go into. In some matches it is. There are some matches though, because they can retire, Protect 2 may not be viable at that point. And there's some decks that honestly also hit with very, very hard numbers. So you actually appreciate the fact of a Protect 1 marker. And I found myself with playtesting a bit too, that I would rather have a Protect 1 marker, and having that extra card to discard for that. That's where the draw triggers can help out in too, where you draw an extra card for being able to PG essentially at that point. And with another card to help out with the quality of the hand is really Negerbone. And Negerbone has the drop zone skill where you can discard a card, you can superior call grade 1 from the drop zone, and if you have 10 or more, you can call anything, right? So as you're going through the game, you can call your key pieces that are 7 Seas, and you're discarding your draw triggers that over time may stack up in your hand, but you're improving the quality of your hand by discarding them into getting something of value onto the field. And that can be also getting Greed Shade too. So you can get Greed Shade with Negerbone and actually get like a Rampage Shade for that improvement in quality, but also have a unit on board. And then you have Nightcrow to piggyback on Soul Blasting, retiring a rear guard that is non-7Cs for your benefit to actually replace it, and boom, you have 7Cs units on the rear guard circle, which you can actually attack at that point. So this actually does a lot to the deck, and I wanted to take some time to really just dive into it, and that's why it makes a lot of sense once you play with it. At first, it seems like it's an absurd number of draw triggers, don't get me wrong. And another thing that I like to talk about too is some of the, I wouldn't say, I guess bad matchups. I hate saying that too, but this deck has a harder time dealing with two kinds of decks, Vanguard focused decks, especially with Force 2 being able high crits or very high numbers with Force 1 as well. Protect 1 helps with that, your draw PGs help, and you got your Greed Shade to recycle them as well. But you can only do that so much, especially if you're considering your guarding power with like PGs and your Rampage Shades to actually protect your Slash Shades, for example, being attack in the front row, for example. But ideally, with those matchups, they're a little hard to deal with, and since they don't put rear guards, it's a lot harder to get those on-hit effects, especially if you always have to hit the Vanguard. And at that point, you are risking a 50-50 chance of getting a damage trigger for their end, and then it kind of makes it harder for you to hit with the following attacks that you still have. So it's just one of those things that the deck naturally just struggles with, and it's, you know, one way to mitigate in that too as well. The other type of decks that the deck has struggles with are Mirage-like decks. And what I mean by Mirage is that clans have the ability to call rear guards and at the end of the turn somehow get rid of them. So Night Rose is a very good example. What's a very smart strategy if you're the Night Rose player going against 7Cs, for example, is not really calling rear guards early on, and then when you have like a column bar to go Ghost Ship removes itself, so that way you just have the Vanguard, and then once you go to your grade 3 turn, you have Night Rose that retires everything. So you're applying pressure, you're generating advantage in Night Rose, and you're eliminating your rear guards, so that way the 7Cs player cannot hit those rear guards to actually force that pressure to get a treasure marker at that point. They have to hit your Vanguard, and there you can dictate if you want to guard, take damage, get a trigger, make it a lot easier for you as a Night Rose player to deal with 7Cs, and again, kind of hurting the 7Cs player at that point. I hope that makes a lot of sense too. The retire-based clans too. I was actually playing against Aquaforce, for example, with Thawas, for example. You're able to arrest any rear guard and actually retire a unit on your opponent's side, and they get to choose, so they could actually pop your Slash Hit in the back row so you cry. And you also, if you use Protect 2 and you typically have the Rise Tutor in Protect 2 marker, so that way you can get a 20k shield value out of that, and it gets popped by some retire effect at that point, so it forces you to go into Protect 1 even more, and so that's why the draw triggers even go into that benefit of actually discarding for the Protect 1 cost at that point. So it's just really mindful of those clans, and then at the same time, even Favas has access to Coral Assault and Narissa. They can do 4 attacks and actually clean up the board, especially if the back row of rested units to go into Lambros. They do their 4 attacks with Narissa and Coral Assault, and then Lambros restanding one of them. They go into Assault, they draw cards, and they still have a back row of 3 rear guards that can continually rest. They go into Lambros and apply triple drive with being a base 25 too on top of that, or if they have a booster too, it makes it a 33k column, for example, if they have an 8k booster at that point. So it's just those little things that the deck kind of has struggled with, and I wanted to point that out too. The draw triggers do so much, and that's why you want to focus on Greed Shade, Dagger Bone to improve the quality of your hand, to improve the quality of your field. Column Bar helps with so much too, with the consistency a bit. I like the 3-3 ratio between all these 3. It's that you get to at least see one of them in your mid game to actually use, whether it be in the drop zone for Negrabone or in hand with Columbard at that point or Greed Shade. And honestly, you just want to make sure that you see your 7Cs units, because as long as you're seeing them, you're applying the pressure so you can get the treasure marker at that point, so you can really start dominating your opponent at that point. And like I said before, once you get those 3 treasure markers, you actually at a better state. All your 7Cs unit get plus 5k. They start hitting like 13k Vanguards with the graded ones. 8k plus 5 makes 13. And then of course you can put magic numbers with triggers, and it just goes from there at that point. So that's what I wanted to take a deeper dive into this deck. Probably this is what was winning according to G Station a couple of days ago on his video. Definitely check out his video. I'll link it down too, so you can check it out, and even some of the other decks that are winning currently. I just wanted to take some time to actually cover this. I know some people have interest in 7 Cs and want to take a certain direction. So here's one where the draw triggers can help you with building advantage a little bit. Having a discard fodder for Protect 1. Not only that, you can use improving the quality of your hand with Reach and Negerbone, for example. And at the same time, you don't have to worry about putting a crit on your opponent too soon, where they can get a second chance of getting the trigger being damage checked, which can hinder your treasure gaining abilities from the attacks that are still following afterwards at that point. So thought this was helpful. I thought I'd share, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.